The lakeside vacation home was supposed to be my sanctuary. After 5 years of backbreaking effort, I had finally purchased it for a full $1 million, a place where I could sink comfortably into my armchair and enjoy a quiet reading session with nothing but the gentle sound of the water as background music. That sacred moment was mercilessly shattered by the arrival of an uninvited guest. Her shrill voice made my eardrums vibrate unpleasantly. The owner of that voice was my younger sister, Ashley. She now stood firmly in my living room, declaring, "This house belongs to me, my husband, and my in-laws. It should have been bought with the money Grandma left for us." For a second, I couldn't even process what she was saying. My thoughts simply stopped. Grandma's inheritance? It was true that after Grandma passed away, her assets were legally divided equally between us sisters. I received my share as well. But how did that possibly connect to this vacation home? The inheritance had been such a small amount, nowhere near enough to buy this place. Did she really think I had stolen from her? What are you talking about, Ashley? I bought this place with the money I earned myself. I saved for 5 years. I didn't use a single cent of your money. At my calm rebuttal, Ashley snorted. Liar. Her sharp voice cut through the air. There's no way someone like you could make that kind of money by working honestly. You must have been hiding Grandma's inheritance from us. That's the only explanation. Thief. Baseless delusions. And yet her eyes held the absolute conviction of someone who believed she'd uncovered the truth, filled with hatred. As I stood there unable to even respond, Ashley's husband, who had been standing behind her as if hiding, stepped forward with an insulting grin. Come on now, Mandy. Quit making pathetic excuses. How about you just admit what you did? If you do, maybe we'll spare you from having to deal with the police. He looked me up and down as if appraising me, his voice dripping with mockery. You must have been desperate to show off, stealing family money just to buy a place like this. With that one sentence, the heat in my head cooled instantly. So that was it. After I moved out, I shared almost nothing about my life with them. It was to avoid interference and jealousy. But because of that, the version of me that existed in their minds had been frozen in time for years. They knew nothing about the fact that I ran a consulting firm, nor about the 5 years of struggle I fought through to build it. So, to them, the idea that I could afford this place any other way simply didn't exist, except by stealing the inheritance. I looked straight at my brother-in-law, who wore that insulting grin, and at my sister, who stared at me with hatred, and said quietly, "If you truly believe I stole Grandma's inheritance, then the solution is simple, isn't it?" My unexpectedly composed voice made the two exchange uncertain glances. You can ask the lawyer who handled the inheritance. I can open all my bank records. You'll see immediately that I didn't steal a single cent. It was the most logical and, frankly, the only reasonable way to clear this absurd accusation. At my perfectly reasonable argument, Ashley was momentarily at a loss for words and looked up at her husband anxiously. Noticing her wavering demeanor, her husband immediately stepped forward, pulled Ashley close by the shoulder, and said with a mocking smile, Hey, don't let her fool you with such obvious lies, Ashley. A lawyer? Bank records? Mandy could fake all of that with money. Did she really think such cheap tricks would scare us off? Ashley, reassured by her husband's whisper, once again glared at me with eyes burning with hatred, as if his words were the only truth in the world. With growing confidence, he continued, Don't worry. We've got solid evidence that Mandy kept the family money for herself. Your parents know everything, too. If it comes to it, they'll testify in court. Once this goes to trial, there's no way she can talk her way out. He didn't explain what this so-called evidence was, but spoke with the confidence of a man who believed his victory was guaranteed. Ashley, who knew nothing about the law, took his confidence as proof that they could win. Completely taken in by her husband, she flashed a triumphant smile. You heard him, right? We have evidence and witnesses. We're going to sue you. In court, we'll expose all your lies and betrayal, and this house will go to its rightful owners. Us. That's all there is to it. With that declaration, she grabbed her husband's arm and turned her back on me. They left like a storm passing through. I stood there alone, stunned. This place was supposed to be where I built my future with the people I love, a place of inspiration. And now it was being trampled on by my own family. What evidence could they possibly have? They said my parents knew everything. I pulled out my phone and tapped my mother's number. "Hello, Mandy." Her voice on the other end sounded colder than usual. "Mom, Ashley came here just now and said something unbelievable. She thinks I bought this vacation home with Grandma's inheritance." Of course, that's not true. I bought it entirely with the money I earned. Desperate, but still trying to stay logical, I explained the situation. My mother would understand how absurd this all was. I believed that. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. When my mother finally spoke, her voice was nothing like the sympathy or comfort I had hoped for. "Mandy, about that. The money your grandmother left was supposed to go toward a new house for Ashley, her husband, and his parents. That was the agreement." "What?" "I've never heard anything like that. The inheritance was supposed to be divided equally by law." My desperate protest was cut down by one sharp sentence. "No, you're just forgetting." That cold dismissal left me speechless. Was this the evidence they were talking about? There was a rough sound on the phone, and then a different voice, lower, heavier, and filled with intimidation, struck my ears. My father. "Mandy," there wasn't even a hint of concern for his daughter in his tone. "I heard everything from your mother. Your excuses are disgraceful." "Dad, no, it's not true. I never stole." "Listen." My words were shut down instantly. "You will apologize to Ashley right now and hand that vacation home over to her. That is what you're going to do. Understand?" It was an order. His voice held no doubt, no hesitation. Only a deep, hollow despair filled my body, draining all strength from me. My own father treating me like some object without a will or dignity. I couldn't say anything back. I quietly ended the call. Even my parents were siding with Ashley's fabricated lies. Why? How? The betrayal was so incomprehensible that standing upright felt impossible. Just then, a message came in from my best friend, Kelly. "Mandy, check Ashley's SNS right now." That ominous sentence made my heart thump painfully. I immediately opened the app and went to Ashley's account, which I hadn't looked at properly in years. What I saw there was unbelievable. My sister stole the precious money Grandma left our family and used it to buy herself a luxury vacation home. I begged her to return it, but she wouldn't even listen. I just wanted to build a modest home with my family. A post dripping with self-pity and lies, already flooded with hundreds of likes. The comment section was an avalanche of insults directed at me. "Greedy sister. What kind of monster steals from family? Unbelievable. She's horrible." Strangers who didn't even know me were sympathizing with Ashley's fabricated story and cursing me as if I were some kind of monster. My finger trembled with anger as I scrolled. What they believed was the tragic heroine, my sister Ashley, so skillfully portrayed, while the 5 years of effort and success I had fought so hard to build were dismissed with a single word: greed. This couldn't go on. If I let my emotions consume me, that would be exactly what they wanted. I clenched my teeth and through the chaos in my mind, called Kelly. Kelly wasn't only my closest friend from college. She was also the legal advisor for my company. From the day I started my business, she had supported me both professionally and emotionally. Someone truly irreplaceable. She answered before the ringing even finished. "Mandy, you saw the message, right?" The moment I heard her voice, the tension inside me nearly snapped, and I swallowed back the tears threatening to fall. "I saw it. Kelly, what am I going to do?" "All of it. Everything is a lie. Ashley came here, and Dad and Mom, they're all on her side." My words tangled and broke. On the other end, Kelly stayed silent, waiting patiently for me to calm down. When my breathing finally steadied, she spoke, quiet but firm. "I know. I knew you'd call. It's completely natural to feel overwhelmed right now, but you can't let it swallow you. Let's go step by step. Can you tell me everything that happened?" I took a deep breath and recounted everything. Ashley's sudden visit, her husband's insults, and the phone call with my parents. When I finished, Kelly was silent for a moment, then spoke clearly and decisively. That's no longer just a family argument. Can you come to my office right now? We need to plan what to do next. Okay, I'll go right away. Her calm, steady voice helped me regain just a little control. I grabbed my car keys and rushed out of the vacation home. When I arrived at the office, Kelly placed a hot cup of coffee in front of me. She sat across from me, looking straight into my eyes. This isn't a simple family dispute. This is serious defamation and attempted coercion. Mandy, do you have the resolve to fight back? Resolve. Yes, they were my family. I couldn't hold back. I would need to go all the way. Her unwavering gaze made me swallow hard. There was hesitation, but there was no other path left to protect my life and my dignity. I nodded firmly. I'll fight. Please, Kelly, help me. Of course, you're not alone and we're going to win. Her words were like a ray of light piercing through the darkness around me. First of all, that so-called verbal family agreement they mentioned has zero legal validity. Kelly stated it without a hint of doubt. In her office, we began building a concrete strategy for counterattack. The most important thing is separating your emotions completely and stacking up facts and evidence. Judges don't care about tears or sympathy, only about objective data. I understand. So, what do I need to gather for that objective data? I need every document from the past 5 years proving the flow of your earnings. Pay stubs, revenue reports from your company, bank statements, savings account records. We're going to prove perfectly that the $1 million used to buy the vacation home came solely from your work and had absolutely nothing to do with the inheritance. Her instructions were clear. I headed straight to my company and pulled out a thick file from the back of the cabinet. Inside were the records of my blood and sweat, everything since the day I started the business. As I turned each page, the hardships of the past 5 years came flooding back and transformed into unwavering confidence. This was my life. No one was going to take it away. A few days later, a thick envelope from the courthouse arrived in my mailbox, a formal lawsuit. My hands trembled as I opened it. And on the plaintiff line were the names of Ashley, her husband, and both my father and mother. My entire family was trying to drag me into court as a defendant. They were serious. When I showed the complaint to Kelly, she read through it calmly. Well then, we don't need to hold back at all anymore. She immediately moved on to the next step. We need witnesses. Someone who was present when your grandmother's will was created and executed. Someone trustworthy who can testify that it was completely fair. 2 people came to mind immediately: my uncle, my father's younger brother, and his son, my cousin. Grandma had always trusted my uncle deeply. I took a deep breath and dialed his number. Mandy, what's wrong? Are you doing well? His gentle voice, the one I hadn't heard in so long, eased my heart just a little. I gathered my courage and explained everything. How my father and mother, along with Ashley, were suing me over Grandma's inheritance. I heard my uncle sharply inhale on the other end. After a long silence, he spoke in a heavy voice. Unbelievable. If your grandmother were alive to hear this, she'd be heartbroken. I knew your father always favored Ashley, but I never thought he'd go this far. Disappointment and anger bled through his tone. Mandy, you don't need to worry. His voice grew firm, so firm I could feel the strength even through the phone. I know you're telling the truth. If you need testimony, I'll gladly take the stand. And my son, Ethan, remembers the will's content clearly. I'm sure he'd help you too. Warmth welled in my chest. There were people who were truly on my side. Then my uncle's voice lowered, as if he were about to reveal a secret he'd kept for years. Mandy, I've never told you this before, but your father once pressured your grandmother to change her will to leave more of her assets to Ashley. What? Of course, your grandmother refused. She said, "My children are all equal," and stood her ground. But your father held on to that resentment for years. Maybe what's happening now is that resentment exploding in the worst possible way. A past I had never known about my father. That tenacity sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't just Ashley's jealousy anymore. Something deeper, uglier was swirling beneath the surface of my family. With the promise of support from my uncle and cousin, Kelly and I prepared everything for the day to come. A few days before the trial, Kelly and I visited the courthouse for a final meeting. As we walked down the hallway, we came face to face with a group I knew all too well: Ashley, her husband, and my parents. Their attorney walked beside them. For a moment, the air froze. My father glared at me, and my mother quickly looked away. As we passed, Ashley's husband leaned toward my ear and spoke loud enough to be clearly heard. "You'd better make your last desperate attempt. Not that anything you say will matter." I stopped walking and slowly turned back toward him. Then, in an icy voice, I said, "I'll make you understand." My words stopped not only him, but Ashley and my parents as well. That vacation home is 100% under my name, purchased solely with my own income. Not a single cent of Grandma's inheritance was used. And the day after tomorrow, right here in this courtroom, I'll show you every piece of perfect evidence. Be prepared. My words froze everyone in the hallway. None of them could say a word as they hurried away. Beside me, Kelly, who had been quietly watching, lightly tapped my shoulder. "Well said, Mandy. It's all right. All that's left is to tell the truth in court." She was right. I had no intention of taking even a single step back anymore. The day of the trial, I sat beside Kelly at the defense table. My heart pounded violently, yet strangely, I felt no fear. When the session began, I calmly looked at my family across the room. My father with his arms crossed, my mother staring down at her lap, and Ashley glaring at me with watery eyes. Their attorney rose dramatically, delivering an emotional speech about a non-existent verbal family agreement and a supposed betrayal of trust. When my father took the stand, he repeated baseless claims like, "She naturally understood because we're family." My mother tearfully insisted she just wanted Ashley to be happy as promised. Ashley performed perfectly as the tragic heroine, claiming, "My sister didn't just take money. She stole my dreams." Their web of lies drew sympathetic sighs from the gallery. But Kelly and I simply watched in cold silence. When their cheap theater ended and Ashley returned to her seat, Kelly stood. Her dignified presence alone shifted the atmosphere of the courtroom. "Your Honor." Her voice wasn't loud, but it rang clearly through the room. "The plaintiffs have relied purely on emotional arguments. We will present only facts and evidence." She then called the first witness, my uncle. When Kelly asked about the will, my uncle stated firmly, the will was extremely simple. Everything was to be divided equally. No special conditions, no separate promises. Nothing else was ever written. The plaintiff's side stirred uneasily. Kelly pressed forward. "Is it true that Mandy's father attempted to persuade the grandmother to alter her will before her passing?" My uncle closed his eyes briefly in pain. Then he looked straight at the judge and answered, "Yes." Unfortunately, my brother repeatedly urged her to leave more assets to Ashley, but valuing fairness above all, she refused every time. A heavy silence filled the courtroom. My father's face turned crimson as he clenched his fists. My mother covered her face, trembling. Ashley looked incredulous, glancing back and forth between her parents and my uncle. Next, my cousin Ethan took the stand and firmly confirmed everything his father had said. Their lies collapsed under the weight of the testimony of trusted third parties. Then Kelly presented the decisive evidence, my complete income and savings records from the past 5 years. These documents proved that the $1 million used to purchase the vacation home came entirely from my own earnings. As the judge reviewed the thick file in silence, my father turned pale and my mother hung her head low. Against solid, irrefutable facts, their lies had no defense. Eventually, after reviewing all the documents, the judge quietly looked up. As if on cue, Kelly delivered the final blow. "Your Honor, we have one more piece of evidence demonstrating the malicious behavior of the plaintiffs." She approached the clerk with a new document. This is the police report filed just days before the lawsuit was initiated regarding the plaintiff, Ashley, attempting to trespass on the defendant Mandy's vacation property. Ashley let out a short, panicked gasp. Their attorney hurried to object. "Objection. That has absolutely no relevance to the matter of inheritance." But Kelly cut him off, calm and controlled. "Yes, it is very much relevant. This record clearly demonstrates that the plaintiffs acted despite knowing they had no legal ownership, while still believing, without any basis, that they somehow had a right to the property. It proves their willingness to resort to illegal actions to force that delusion into reality. Kelly turned toward Ashley, her voice quiet yet unyielding. You attempted to open the door to Mandy's vacation home using a key that did not belong to you, didn't you? No. I just wanted to see what it looked like inside. Just a little. Ashley tried to defend herself through tears, but it only dug her grave deeper. Admitting fault while making emotional excuses held no power in a courtroom. Their lawyer was completely speechless, wiping sweat from his forehead. The outcome was obvious to anyone. At last, the judge looked directly at each of my family members seated at the plaintiff's table. His gaze sharp, authoritative. I will now deliver the verdict. The courtroom held its breath as his emotionless voice echoed. This court finds no evidence that any inheritance funds were used for the purchase of the property. The entirety of the money originated from the defendant's personal income. Furthermore, the alleged verbal family agreement holds no legal validity. Based on these facts, the court concludes that the plaintiff's claims are entirely without merit. Therefore, the ruling is as follows. The plaintiff's complaint is dismissed in full. The sharp crack of the gavel echoed and strength drained from my entire body. Beside me, Kelly gripped my hand firmly. As my family stared on in despair, the judge continued with an unusually severe statement. Additionally, the court determines that this lawsuit was an unjust and malicious action based on blatant falsehoods. Therefore, the plaintiffs are permanently prohibited from filing any similar claim against the defendant in the future. A permanent injunction on refiling meant they would never again be able to drag me into court. A perfect, absolute victory. Ashley collapsed to the floor whispering, "No, this can't be." After the hearing ended, Kelly and I walked out into the hallway where my father stood waiting, his face burning with rage. "Mandy, don't you dare think this is over. We're still family." The moment I heard those words, something snapped inside me. For the first time in my life, I faced him head-on and answered everything I had swallowed for years. Family? A family doesn't drag someone into court with lies. A family doesn't try to steal what someone else worked their whole life for. My mother reached out to grab my arm, tears streaming down her face, but I shook her off. "Mandy, please. I don't want to fight anymore." I didn't want to fight either, but Ashley and you all forced this. My voice was cold. "And you lost." I turned my back on them and walked away with Kelly. During the drive back from the courthouse, I stared blankly out the window beside Kelly. "It's really over, isn't it?" When I murmured to no one in particular, Kelly smiled gently at the wheel. Yet still, a small thorn remained in my heart. My father's words in the hallway. "We're still family." Those words pulled me sharply back to reality. Even if they lost in court, they would keep trying to chain me with blood ties. If nothing changed, they would eventually find another way to invade my life again. "Kelly, there's still something I need to do." "What is it?" "I want to sever ties with them legally. Completely. I want to make sure they can never come near me or my vacation home again." Understanding my resolve, Kelly immediately began the procedures for a restraining order. Winning the lawsuit wasn't the end. Cutting them out of my life entirely, letting them go, was the real victory. A few days later, the restraining order was approved. My father, mother, Ashley, and Ashley's husband were legally prohibited from coming within 300 feet of my home, my company, or the lakeside vacation house. When I held the official document in my hands, I felt, for the first time, that the months of painful battle were finally rewarded. That weekend, while staying at the vacation home, I received a call from my uncle. Hesitantly, he told me about my family's aftermath. Because we had exposed the truth so thoroughly in court, my parents had been completely isolated by the entire extended family. No one sides with dishonest people. But the most shocking news was about Ashley. He said her social media was apparently a disaster. Some of Ashley's friends, people she had invited specifically to watch the trial and pity her, had been in the gallery. They saw with their own eyes every one of her lies crumble. The moment the trial ended, Her comment section exploded with accusations. Liar. You're the thief. I thought you were my friend. How could you? Every accusation imaginable flooded in. The tragic heroine persona Ashley had built shattered instantly. Those who once defended her turned on her overnight, and she lost everything, even her friends' trust. Eventually, Ashley had no choice but to delete her entire account. To make matters worse, her husband abandoned her. He had only stayed with Ashley because he wanted the vacation home. Now that the possibility was gone, he demanded a divorce without hesitation. Not only that, his ongoing affair, which had begun before the trial, was exposed. Ashley was now trapped in a messy, ugly divorce battle. Her in-laws, who had also expected to benefit from her future assets, turned their backs on her as well. Losing everything, her marriage, her social standing, her reputation, Ashley sank into severe depression and shut herself away in her room. A pitiable ending born from the seeds she herself had sown. But I felt no sympathy. They lied and hurt others for selfish gain. This was their natural consequence. I simply accepted the truth that I now lived in a completely different world from them. 1 year passed after those stormy days. I now spend weekends at the vacation home with my boyfriend, and the place is filled with warmth for the first time. Sometimes I invite Kelly, my uncle, and my cousin over for dinner. Watching their smiles, I finally understood. Blood is not what defines a family. Family is the people who stand beside you when you're on the edge of despair. The ones who reach out their hand and fight with you. They are my true family.